last week.
Who's over there? I can't see. Good morning. How's everyone today? My name is Gord Perks, and I'm the chair of this budget subcommittee. We have quorum, so I'd like to now call the meeting to order. Although we may be meeting in different locations today, the Budget Committee would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nation, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today's meeting is being held in person in Committee Room 1 at City Hall. Members of the public who are registered to speak are in the room with us and also on video conference. This meeting is being live streamed, and you can find the link on toronto.ca/council. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none. We are meeting today as a subcommittee of the Budget Committee. Councillor Chris Moyse, Councillor Amber Morley, and myself are members of one of two budget subcommittees that have been established to hear public presentations. Our City Council colleagues, Councillor Shelley Carroll, Councillor Lily Chang, and Councillor Jamal Myers are meeting right now at the North York Civic Centre to hear public presentations on the budget. We have approximately 96 speakers signed up to speak at our 3 meetings today at City Hall, plus another 39 registered to speak at the North York Civic Centre. I want to thank everyone who's registered to speak to the Budget Committee today. For those of you who are speaking, here's how our process works. We have speakers in person and online. If you're online, the video conference host will activate your microphone and you can turn on your video if you'd like. I will call each name on the list in order. You will have 5 minutes to speak to the Budget Committee. After you speak, please stay with us for a moment because members of the committee may wish to ask you questions. After any questions from the committee, you may stay and listen or follow the rest of the meeting on YouTube. The clerk has received emails and communications from the public about the 2026 budget. Those communications are being made available to members on the CMP, the clerk's meeting portal. I encourage the public to send their comments to the Budget Committee throughout the budget process by emailing buc@toronto.ca. This is the public's opportunity to speak to us about the budget. It is also our opportunity to consider your comments and input before we make our recommendations to the mayor. We all very much appreciate you taking the time to participate in our budgeting process. Good morning. Deputy Mayor Morley is with us now too. We've got a full house. Okay, everyone ready to dive in? I see people nodding yes. All right, first up today is Kelly Langard. Welcome, Kelly, and thank you for coming and kicking it off for us today. Okay.
Thanks very much, Councillor Perks and Deputy Mayor Morley and Councillor Moyse. Nice to see you all. Thanks so much for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm joined by the next speaker on your list, Umair Jafar, and we would like to combine our times. My name is Kelly Langard, and I am the CEO and Director of the Toronto Arts Council and Toronto Arts Foundation. And to begin, I want to thank Mayor Chow and all members of City Council for treating arts and culture as a serious civic priority. This is reflected in the adoption last year of the city's 10-year culture plan and the investments that support it. Your commitment to this culture plan has already strengthened Toronto's creative sector by helping us to provide crucial funding to artists and arts organizations across our city, like Native Earth Performing Arts, which received a long overdue 20% funding increase in 2025, and the Nia Center for the Arts, which received a 70% increase for their work to advance Black artistic expression in Toronto. This funding came at a crucial time when artists and arts organizations in Toronto are facing major affordability challenges, and in a year when we received more outstanding grant applications than any other in our history. We are here to talk to you today about why continued and increased investment in the arts is one of the safest bets that you can make to improve Toronto's future. Broadly, the arts contribute enormously to the economy. According to a recent report from the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, growth in the arts and culture sector in Canada has outpaced the growth of industries such as oil and gas and manufacturing. Here at home, the arts are responsible for generating $11.4 billion toward Toronto's GDP, and the city's investment in the Toronto Arts Council is part of that. Our data shows that for every $1 granted in operating funding, $17 is generated for Toronto's economy. That's money back in your wards, generated by arts and culture. Through TAC operating grants, more than 16,000 local artists received employment income, which represents about half of professional artists in Toronto. These are real jobs supporting families and contributing to Toronto's tax base. But as the cost of living and the cost of doing business rises, these jobs are at risk of disappearing, and this is one reason why increased public investment is so important. In 2025, even with an increase to our budget, Toronto Arts Council received far more high-quality grant applications than we could fund. In 2025, there was $16.8 million in unmet funding requests, 63% of our total granting budget, and up significantly from a shortfall of $11.6 million the previous year. To meet this demand, Toronto Arts Council is requesting an increase to our budget in line with what is recommended in the city's culture plan. Last year, TAC received $2 million plus an inflationary increase from the city, and we did with those funds as we promised, and more. We invested in the capacity, stability, and growth of new and vital arts organizations. We invested in grants to individual artists, and we increased funding in strategic initiatives supporting newcomers and communities outside the downtown core. This year's increase will build on that foundation by expanding support to equity-deserving artists, driving innovative community-led solutions to sector challenges, increasing public access to the arts in neighborhoods across our city, and further stabilizing vital arts organizations so that they can keep their doors open to Toronto residents and offer decent work for Toronto artists. This funding will benefit programs like Animating Historic Sites, Animating Toronto Parks, and TDSB Connects, which help artists transform public spaces and classrooms into stages for creativity and connection, and helps the city fulfill its Culture for All priority in the Culture Connects plan. The arts are a major economic driver and social convener. Their richness and color in your constituents' lives, and they increase safety and well-being in your communities. There are so many benefits that the arts bring to our city, and these benefits can't be sustained without adequate public investment. It's why we are so grateful for the increase to TAC's budget that City Council approved last year, and for the $2 million that is proposed in this year's budget. With your collaboration, we can ensure that the arts are here for all Torontonians. And I'd now like to hand it over to Umer Jafar, a member of Toronto Arts Council's Board of Directors and the CEO of Small World Music.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you for the invitation to speak today. As I was leaving home today and the gust of fresh air hit my face, I realized this is the best time to question life choices, because as an immigrant, I chose to live in this city. Out of all the lovely beaches in the world, it was Toronto that is the place that called home, and a place I choose to raise my child. And the reason I call this home is the same reason I'm here in front of you today, along with my colleagues from the Toronto Arts Council and the community. The arts are what is central to what it means to be Torontonian. And a recent study found that 2 in 3 Torontonians say they attended arts in the last year alone, 80% of whom were parents. Last year, the Toronto Art Foundation's Arts in the Park program, made possible by funds from Toronto Arts Council, saw record attendance in free and family-friendly cultural events. 140,000 members participated, audience members participated, which is a 40% increase from the previous year. This speaks directly to the power of the arts and its ability to bring communities together. However, one of the challenges Toronto faces is loneliness, and it's become more real since the pandemic. That's why we believe more than ever before that we need to invest in the benefits of arts to bring people together. 76% people reported that they are likely to attend. They feel connected to their neighborhoods because of the arts. This is one of the main drivers of people, according to the same survey. More than 3/4 of people who attend cultural events in Toronto feel that the arts contribute to their sense of cultural belonging. The work we do at Smallville Music is to bring diverse communities together. Our mandate is cultural equity through music. One of our flagship programs is an integration programs for newcomer and refugee artists, which was initiated because of Toronto Art Council's funding. And over the last 6 years, 120 artists, newcomers, and refugees have gone through this program. Imagine the feeling when you arrive in a new country and feel that you're accepted the way you are, speaking the same language that you were brought up speaking, and singing the same songs that your mom taught you. That is what makes these sort of investments in the arts special for us and the work we do. Another barrier that we are facing currently is cost. Both delivering in the arts and participating in the arts is more expensive than ever before. 74% individual artists and arts groups and 53% arts organizations have reported facing financial situations that are challenging. Common Grounds Dance Festival, produced by Toes for Dance, recently celebrated its 5th anniversary season at Lee Lifeson Art Park. Co-founder David Northworthy says his organization's collaboration with Toronto Art Council and Foundation has been instrumental to their success, helping to deepen community engagement, growing their audiences from 269 in the first year to over 2,000 in the most recent years. David says additional funding is needed to amplify and stabilize the work of community organizations like ours over long term, developing high-quality programming models and deep neighborhood relationships takes an abundance of time that needs robust, consistent, and inflation-adjusted support. As a leader of a local grassroots organization myself, I can attest that the financial pressures are more real than ever before. In fact, last year was the first year in 24 years that our annual free community festival had to be paused because of the high production, travel, and accommodation costs for the artists participating. Given the massive economic and social benefits of the arts, we believe that the arts should be treated as an essential civic service and not as a luxury. We want to request that the city considers continued support of the Toronto Art Council, and we want to thank the city for being an ally of the arts. We ask that City Council increase funding for the Toronto Arts Council in line with the recommendations in the culture plan, so we can continue to help arts organizations across the city keep up with inflation and the work to provide barrier-free access to the arts.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's time. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor.
Are there any questions for Kelly or Romer? No? Thank you so much for coming down and sharing that with us today.
Thank you.
Okay, next I have Jennifer Chambers, and she's online. Jennifer, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Jennifer?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome. So you have 5 minutes to make a presentation to the committee. You can start as soon as you're ready.
Thank you and good morning. I'm speaking today on behalf of the Empowerment Council, which is a peer advocacy organization pertaining to mental health and drug use issues. So Toronto's created a model community-based service. It's non-coercive. It's composed of a diversity of people who bring a range of experience. Most notably, many of the staff are from the communities of people who've been most at risk of use of force on police calls. People with personal experience of having had crises in their lives, people who are members of Black and Indigenous communities. I've profiled the Toronto Community Crisis Services in a number of international forums to great positive response. Why, you may wonder, are you having the unusual experience of an organization appearing to heap praise on what you've done? It's because the work isn't done, and it needs to grow to meet the demand. The Toronto Community Crisis Service has successfully diverted a large percentage of mental health crisis calls from police. 78 to 89% of transferred 911 calls handled without police involvement, resolving tens of thousands of incidents since its launch, including over 34,000 calls by late 2025. In most cases, the team did not require other emergency services and only requested police attendance in about 2.5% of calls. This initiative had led to a decrease in the number of mental health calls handled by Toronto Police, who reported a steady decline after 2021. The Toronto Police Service is now considering further reducing their involvement in mental health calls by withdrawing the Mobile Crisis Intervention Team, which are response units consisting of a police officer and a hospital-based nurse. This form of response was never actually asked for by the people who most often experience crises. When consulted before its founding, what people said they needed was a non-coercive, community-based alternative that bypassed police altogether. Now that alternative exists, and it's achieved exactly what everyone wanted. Instead of members of the public or families calling 911, much of the time, when people got to a state that other people found disturbing, now the people in crisis themselves primarily are calling TCCS before this point. Satisfaction with the survey is very high, both among the clients and members of the public. People are left with their dignity as well as their safety. TCCS needs further resources to keep meeting the needs of Torontonians. In some cases, police must respond to crisis calls simply because they're the only service funded adequately to respond immediately. If everyone agrees that TCCS response is the best possible option, and people do, police resources have been saved by TCCS picking up calls that formerly went to them. So this should mean that some of the $1.43 billion that the police are scheduled to receive in 2026 could instead be directed to TCCS. Police, it must be acknowledged, will still have some mental health calls they must attend, and mental health issues can come up on any call, so they must continue to be trained accordingly, but there could still be less police involvement. We also have to consider the driver of crises and the impediments to lasting resolutions for people in crisis. We don't want to just respond to crises, we need to prevent them. Housing scarcity and insecurity loom large here. Contrary to popular belief, lack of housing causes mental health problems more often than the other way around. In terms of costs, human and financial, it's more cost-effective to provide housing than it is to respond to crises and keep people in shelters, jails, and hospitals. So we also ask for support to be directed to affordable, accessible housing. Accessibility in mental health terms is rarely considered, but critical to housing some people with mental health issues is adequate soundproofing. Edmund Yu and Andrew Loku might never have been in a position to be shot by police if they had had homes where sound was not so easily carried. Also worth noting in terms of types of housing required is that in many cases a superior alternative to supportive housing is the provision of flexible supports that follow the person, so people can move and keep continuity of care and have ebbing and flowing needs without their housing having to change or be lost altogether when their needs change. None of us are immune from reaching a crisis point or from the eventual need for housing that is accessible. Let's take care of each other by providing for it. And I have miraculously finished early. Sorry to the interpreters for my quick speaking.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Yeah, Councillor Moyes.
So the MCIT program versus the non-emergency crisis you're referring to, you do realize the MCIT program with an officer and a nurse in that they can use lights and sirens to get to a person in crisis faster than perhaps the new program that we've initiated.
Yeah, that is part of why I'm saying that the new program needs to be expanded so that they have better staffing to cover the city and to respond to crises rapidly.
Are you aware that we've actually expanded the program from a pilot project downtown to across the city, though?
I am aware, and I'm very proud of Toronto having done that. It's a wonderful initiative, but it does still need further expansion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Jennifer, thank you so much for that very thoughtful contribution.
Thank you.
The next deputant I have listed is Marianne Kozinets. Hi, Marianne. Come on up. Welcome. Marianne, is your microphone turned on? Why don't you turn it on and start again?
Thank you.
There we go.
Hi, my name is Marianne, and I'm the Training and Engagement Coordinator for Toronto Drop-In Network. I would like to talk about the importance of increasing drop-in funding, specifically wage parity for frontline workers. Last year, we worked with a graduate student group through U of T Monk's School of Global Affairs and Public Policy. The research topic was wage parity, working conditions, and retention in Toronto drop-ins, a study supporting TDIN's living wage advocacy. Their findings indicated that the average income for a frontline worker in the drop-in is $26.63. That's not very much. It is $932.05 a week before taxes and $680 a week after taxes. The average cost for a one-bedroom apartment in Toronto is about $1,715 a month, and as you can see, these numbers are quite problematic. The main workplace challenges that were cited were insufficient salary, high work pressure, lack of resources, and limited time capacity and understaffing. Typical drop-in responsibilities are crisis intervention, day-to-day operations, case management, service coordination, food service, distribution of essential items like clothing and hygiene products, program facilitation, and of course, added to this is overdose response and CPR. $26.63 does not line up with adequate compensation for this level of expertise and skills. Drop-ins provide an essential service and are life-saving hubs for those who are unhoused, precariously housed, living with mental health and/or substance use issues. They are a place where people can get food, resources, and safety. They are a place for social connection and for those who are isolated. They're a place where people can be seen and feel a sense of belonging. The staff that work in these drop-ins provide a vital connection where relationships and trust are built. We are in the midst of a housing crisis, a food insecurity crisis, a drug poisoning crisis. Government policies from all levels of government that affect members of this sector fall on drop-ins. As we advocate for better funding and reforms, we are often met with government officials redirecting us to other levels of government and shifting responsibility. This was actually quite apparent over the holidays when Public Health reported 35% increase in overdose calls to Toronto paramedic services. It's a perfect example of a provincial policy, like closing the safe consumption sites, falling on municipal programs like paramedic services. Drop-ins have also significantly increased their overdose response services since March, and yet the funding for drop-ins continues to be insufficient and inadequate for the increasing demand on services. In 2020, during COVID, the city recognized that drop-ins were actually an essential service. Frontline workers were given an incentive of an extra $4 an hour for 16 weeks. This was only a temporary measure to ensure that drop-ins continue to stay open during COVID. The need to have consistent, dedicated workforce to do this incredible work is still here. Staff turnover is high and job satisfaction is alarmingly low. It is incredibly difficult to do this work with so many funding cuts and depletion of resources. TDIN has been tracking the overdoses that drop-in staff are responding to since the closure of the SCSs, and they have increased significantly. Any frontline worker in a drop-in now has the expectation to respond to these overdoses. This is a skill as well as an event that can cause personal trauma both to the participant and the responder. Frontline workers can literally be responding to an overdose, serving lunch, and facilitating programming all in one day. Additionally, we are seeing an increase in people being released from hospitals to drop-ins. These are not overnight spaces and not appropriate spaces for people to recover. Workers are needing to spend time trying to find alternative shelter when shelters are almost non-existent and often have to facilitate returns to hospitals. These frontline workers are working in dire times, getting paid wages where they cannot effectively support themselves. If we were able to find the funding during COVID for what we recognize as an essential service, we can do it now. When I was a frontline worker at a downtown drop-in, I was amazed to see so many people working with second jobs and roommates just trying to cover their own basic needs. I've been back in the drop-in where I worked 3 years ago and cannot recognize most of the drop-in workers. Most staff have left. I would like to end with a quote from our research from a frontline drop-in worker. They said, "If I were a firefighter, I'd be called a hero, but here we're seen as charity workers." I urge you to consider drop-ins the essential service that they are and increase funding to these programs so they can pay their staff a living wage.
Thank you so much, Marianne. Are there any questions? Marianne, thank you for sharing that with us today.
Thanks.
The next deputy I have listed is Melanie Joy. Good morning, Melanie.
Hi, good morning.
Very good, thank you. Go ahead.
I'm good too, thanks. Yeah, my name is Melanie Joy. I'm the executive lead of the Toronto Drop-In Network. I'm going to yes and a lot of what Marianne just said. And just like for your reference, the Toronto Drop-In Network is a member-based coalition of over 50 organizations that operate 56 drop-in sites across the city, which include all of the 25 city-funded drop-ins. I'm going to be speaking to 2 proposed operational budget lines in the TSSS portfolio: drop-in services and emergency shelter and overnight services. So like all of you, I'm at work right now. And like most of you, I wear many hats. A very important part of my role, and a hat I'm wearing today, is amplifying the voices of staff who are essential frontline workers in drop-ins. Workers from drop-ins like Margaret's, Councillor Moyes, like Lamp, Councillor Morley, and like Park, Councillor Parks. I'm going to share a few of their words now as they pertain to the 2026 city budget. I need a wage that I can live on without concern for my housing. I don't do this for the money, but I can't live without it either. Frontline staff have a horribly low salary, which is part of the reason we can't keep good staff. Insufficient salary, high work pressure, burnout, inadequate pay. I need a second job just to survive. I pulled all these quotes from a report that Marianne mentioned that was published in April of 2025 for the Toronto Drop-In Network by the University of Toronto's Public Good Initiative. The report further shows that how workers feel about their pay matters more than the actual amount they receive. When staff believe their wages are fair and sufficient, they're much more satisfied with their jobs. Additionally, inadequate pay is the #1 reason frontline workers quit, regardless of their employment status. The current proposed 2026 budget, operational budget, is allocating a $7 million enhancement for POS shelters as part of a strategy to stabilize and harmonize operating and working conditions for nonprofit staff. In the same operational budget, under drop-in services, there is no identified enhancement for harmonizing the wages for drop-in staff, who, like shelter workers, are also frontline essential. I'm respectfully proposing that the same thoughtful and compassionate enhancement for shelter staff also be allocated for drop-in staff, with an increase of $2.5 million to the current proposed drop-in services operational budget. This increase will not only help stabilize existing drop-in and enhanced harm reduction staff roles, it will harmonize fairness and equity across the entire homelessness service sector. I wasn't sure if I was gonna get 5 or 3 minutes, so I cut it down to 3, so I'm good unless there's any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Moyes has a question for you.
So our city shelters, make more than the amount that you've mentioned. But you mentioned Margaret's, for example, and I don't know if the shelters in Councillor Perks's or
Drop-ins.
drop-ins are city or not. But I know Margaret's is nonprofit and it's not a city facility. So how do we manage to increase their salaries if they're not city drop-ins?
Yeah, so about half of our members are funded by the city and the other half aren't. I only had 3 minutes, so I focused on the ones that were city funded, but we do, as a network, funnel grant funding to non-city funded sites. So, about 3 years ago, we begged and pleaded for menstrual and incontinence funding, which we were successful in, and now support non-city funded sites with that type of grant funding. So if you'd like to add that in to our budget line, I'd be happy with that too.
Okay, thanks.
Good answer. Okay. Are there any other questions? No, seeing none? Thank you so much. The next deputy I have listed is Ellen Goulden. Good morning, Ellen. Whenever you're ready.
Good morning. My name is Elin Golden, and I'm speaking to you today on behalf of the Social Justice and Advocacy Committee of the Anglican Diocese of Toronto. Over 85 Anglican parishes and ministry partners within the City of Toronto serve tens of thousands of vulnerable Torontonians daily through food banks, meal programs, drop-ins, community gardens, refugee sponsorship, and other supports. We have been serving people on the front lines of poverty and housing need for years, and we are seeing that need growing greater than ever. We want to commend the city's draft 2026 budget for several key investments, including the student nutrition program, a TTC fare freeze and fare capping, enhanced library hours, expanded social and crisis support programming, and expansion of the programming providing air conditioning to vulnerable low-income residents. These investments will help ease the burden for many struggling to get by in our city. We know Toronto needs more affordable and supportive housing. Again, we commend the city for helping to create more purpose-built rental, including affordable housing units. We also welcome investments in the rent bank program and in enforcement of the renovictions bylaw to prevent people from falling into homelessness. But housing takes time to create, and there are still many who are falling through the cracks. We still need sufficient, safe, and dignified shelter options for those without housing. We also need low-barrier respite and warming centers that are open throughout the coldest months of the year, not only during extreme weather, but regularly, so that people know where they are and when they are open and are not left scrambling for space, often after having been soaked by rain during the day before the temperature reaches that magical threshold for opening. Even on a day like today, in the 6 blocks between my office and City Hall, I passed 2 people sleeping on the streets in the weather that we have today. We also urge the city to work with organizations like 2 Steps Home that would provide secure micro-shelters, which might provide safe and dignified shelter for people who are not well served by congregate shelters. And then there is the need for cooling centers during periods of extreme heat in summer, of which Toronto had 6 last year compared to the usual 2 or 3. This is only going to get worse with climate change. We are glad that this year's budget provides for 1 dedicated cooling center, but only 1 downtown cooling center for a city of nearly 3 million is surely inadequate. We note that the 2026 Shelter and Housing Support operating budget has been reduced by over $100 million from 2025, and in the budget notes, it cites reduced demand. While it is great that the number of people who are turned away from the shelter system has dropped significantly, over 100 people are still turned away every night, so the demand is still there. And that does not count the many people who opt no longer to call because they have given up on trying to find a shelter. Moreover, the fact that food bank use in Toronto continues to climb, with 1 in 10 Torontonians accessing food banks and 22% of those spending the entirety of their income on rent, the factors that push people into homelessness are still rising. In Feed Ontario's recent hunger report, they noted that spikes in food bank demand tend to precede spikes in homelessness. Daily Bread reports that the total number of food bank visits is up 18% across Toronto, with over half of those clients reporting 3 or more visits per month, a warning sign that another surge in homelessness is on the horizon. We note that the police budget is again projected to increase by $93.8 million from property taxes. This seems to be the one budget line that is always guaranteed an increase, despite the critical need for greater investments in shelter and housing, which arguably would go even further to keeping Torontonians safe. Further, at the budget launch, senior city staff noted that there is $2 million in funds that have not yet been allocated to specific programs or services. While this will not replace the over $100 million cut to shelter services, it might go some way toward helping keep people housed through the rent bank, or helping nonprofits preserve affordable housing units through the MURA program. We understand that municipalities are the level of government least able to raise and money to spend on their communities, and we are raising the need for affordable housing at the provincial and federal levels as well. We urge you to keep finding ways to maximize the benefit of funding partnerships for those most in need in our city. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today.
Thank you, Elin. Do you mind if I ask you a question?
Not at all.
Okay, so there's been a little bit of confusion about the shelter budget, and I want to make sure that we all are working from the same fact base.
Okay.
My understanding is we have multiple funding sources for our shelter system, one of which had been federal funding for refugees in the shelter system.
Right.
The reduction that you're talking about is actually the federal government clawing back money because there were fewer refugees in the system.
Okay.
And in fact, the city funding has increased.
Okay.
It's the gross number, which shows the federal number coming down, which is a bigger cut than what the city's added back. Is that?
Yes, okay, that explains that. It looked as if they were on different lines, if 50% was for refugee and 50% was for shelter, but if that's all, if it was all the federal government, that explains that better.
Yeah, it's if there was a simple way to show the hundreds of different services that we have, we would certainly use it. Does that help you understand a little better?
It does help me understand that. And I reiterate that we can still use funding, more funding for, especially for MURA and for keeping people housed. So.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
Next question. Can I ask you to share your thoughts about the shelter funding with your member of parliament?
I absolutely would be delighted to do that.
That would be really helpful. Thank you so much.
Especially around refugees and newcomers. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Moyes has a question.
I need to stop asking questions because we have a lot of people to go through. But you mentioned micro shelters in your deputation, and are you aware that we need at least an acre of land to actually create micro shelters? Because not just putting a shelter, micro shelters in place, you also need to also have support services.
Yes.
For staff and washrooms and community spaces. Are you aware of that?
Yes, I'm aware of that. Have you actually obtained some land? I know that you were looking.
So we have been looking, and they're limited lands. So we've actually, the last report, I think I put a motion for the council asking for underutilized TTC parking lots to be looked at. So again, we have been, looking at various spaces.
I commend the city for their increased openness to this program.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was painless, wasn't it?
It's totally painless.
There you go. Great. The next deputant we have is Dasha Kulia. Hi, come on up.
I need to plug in my...
Okay. We'll get someone right away.
Just go for it. Question for you.
No problem. Okay, we can see that. Nope, now we can't.
Okay, good morning, councilors. My name is Dasha, and I live in Ward 10. Before I get to my main demand, I'd like to propose a challenge to you three. Today and tomorrow, people are taking time out of their day from work, from their duties. They have to take extra pain meds just to survive sitting in the chairs at City Hall. And when they're done speaking, I challenge you not to respond out loud or in your head with any variation of the following. This is the federal government's job. That's all up to the province, and we actually can't tell them what to do, and this is outside our control. We know there's 3 levels of government. Do most people know what it means to be operating without a deficit? Probably not, but no one is expecting you to solve the housing crisis with the city budget, but please do not act as if you are so powerless. You have direct impact on whether people live or die. It won't surprise you why I'm here today. There will be dozens of other people who will speak on the same thing, and they will provide facts, stats, and victim statements, and proven approaches already working in the city. But year after year, when residents are asked about municipal spending, the same top demand is consistently ignored by City Council. I don't need to say 1,000 words. You already know exactly what I'm talking about. I will just show you a photo. It would be good if I could just show the photo, but that's fine. 1 second. There we go. It's a bit grainy and sorry, so I'll just zoom in like this. So TPS presents this priority of reducing response times. And what about last year on October 8th? When this photo was taken. If they were serious about fixing this problem, let's start with a little bit of transparency, clarify the rationale behind these types of deployments. This is not a funding problem. TPS, just like every other division, needs to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and operate within their means. Cops spend our money on Oakleys and overtime, and this is just a glimpse into the blatant overspending. This is never about safety or enforcement. The hollow exercise of enforcement on the day this picture was taken is public record. You can look that up. Our tax dollars pay for attempted intimidation. The 5-year hiring plan uses FIFA, among other excuses, to justify this $93 million increase. The only way I can rationalize this is if we take the cop skill of being the human centipede fence and we graduate them to become scaffolding to hold up the extra seats we need at BMO Field. And sure, maybe police really need those extra millions to improve their work-life balance so they can attend the Nazi rally, Canada First rally, out of uniform next time. But at the same time, it's kind of nice to hang out with your friends on the clock. So yeah, $1.2 billion is enough for this budget. Let's all stop pretending as if this will benefit our communities. It won't benefit mine. That's how bad things have gone, where I'm not even arguing to reallocate their current budget. At least one, probably 2 of you will wave this increase through, hoping it buys convenience or political safety. But budgets are your values, and residents will remember this when October rolls around. So please listen to what people are asking for and put this money where it actually matters. Thank you. Also, sorry I couldn't zoom in on this picture.
That's okay. Are there any questions for Dasha? Dasha, thank you so much. The next deputant I have listed is Donna Duncan. Good morning, Donna.
Good morning and thank you. I'm Donna Duncan. I am the CEO of the Ontario Long-Term Care Association, and I'm here on behalf of our Toronto long-term care home members. Long-term care is an essential part of both Toronto's healthcare infrastructure and seniors' housing and affordable housing. For our residents, it's not optional. They need to be there, but they also need to be allowed to remain living in their communities, however they define them, the city, a neighborhood, or a specific cultural, faith-based, spiritual, or linguistic community. We owe it to them. They built our communities. We believe that aging in place means aging in your community, and we need to acknowledge the important dual role that long-term care serves in supporting seniors in remaining living in their communities while receiving specialized care to meet their needs that can no longer be met in their family home environments. In Ontario, all care provided in a long-term care home, regardless of ownership or governance, is publicly funded. Admission is based on assessed need, funding is set by the province, and accommodation fees are regulated by the province and means tested. Care standards are the same across the system. Today, across the province, with a long-term care waitlist of more than 50,000 people, we are facing a crisis in capacity that risks destabilizing the health and social services system. And the greatest pressure on this system will be driven by the City of Toronto. Toronto is aging faster and at a greater scale than most communities in the province. 1 in 5 of the individuals on the provincial waitlist, 9,600 people, live in Toronto. That reflects a concentration of older adults whose care needs can no longer be met outside of a 24/7 specialized care setting. At the same time, Toronto's long-term care homes support more than 14,000 residents across 80 homes. Almost half of all spaces are older, and they need to redevelop. When long-term care is available and stable, hospitals move patients through more efficiently, emergency departments function better, and families can remain in the workforce. Our members want to redevelop to support residents, but also to contribute to Toronto's economy so that the city can invest in other social supports and services. Long-term care is a significant economic contributor to the city. Homes create stable local jobs, enable caregivers to stay in the workforce, and drive economic activity through redevelopment and construction. In Toronto, each long-term care space built to redevelop delivers roughly $540,000 in construction GDP and more than $375,000 in construction-related labor income. These are city-based jobs and investments that allow the city to invest in other municipal programs and supports. While redevelopment approval sits with the province, whether those projects move forward depends heavily on municipal factors such as availability of land, zoning, and planning approval processes and timelines. If redevelopment stalls and announced projects do not move forward, Toronto could lose almost 30% of its long-term care capacity. We must protect Toronto's long-term care capacity for the benefit of Toronto seniors and their families, but also for the rest of the health and social services system in Toronto and across the province. Our request to the city is aligned with the tools you're already using. First, we are asking for the city to formally recognize long-term care developments as essential social and health infrastructure. While homes may be operated by different organizations, the care is publicly funded and serves the same public purpose. Second, we are asking the city to consider access to surplus or underutilized city-owned lands for long-term care redevelopment and new projects where appropriate, and to make land available through a transparent and equitable process that provides opportunities to all operators, regardless of ownership or governance. Third, we are asking the city to fast-track long-term care developments on a priority basis, similar to the approach used for affordable housing and others critical city building projects. Predictable, accelerated planning approvals reduce risk, lower costs, and help to ensure projects move forward. These are tools the city is already using to protect other forms of critical social infrastructure. They don't replace provincial responsibility, they complement it. Long-term care is not optional for the people who need it. It is publicly funded and essential infrastructure for an aging city. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No? Thank you so much for your deputation today. I have a note that the next deputant, Naomi Jenka, is running late. Is Naomi here yet? Oh, you are here, Naomi. Come on up.
Good morning.
It was so responsible of you to tell us you might be late. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning,
You've got 5
everybody.
minutes. Go ahead.
My name is Naomi, and I'm one of the team leads with the Safe Spot program. Safe Spot is a peer-led harm reduction and employment program operating within the City of Toronto. The program is funded by the City of Toronto and delivered by the Neighborhood Group Community Services. We hire and train people with lived experience of homelessness and substance use to work directly inside shelters as peer workers. I am here today to speak in support of expanding peer employment programs within the Toronto shelter system, because I know how it is to be inside that system with no way clear forward. For 17 years, I experienced homelessness in the City of Toronto. I moved in and out of shelters while struggling with addiction, instability, and trauma. I could access a bed, but not a pathway forward. It became a revolving door. I remember sitting with my caseworker and setting goals to rebuild my life. No matter which shelter I went to, the goals were always the same: get a job, get sober, get housing. While housing is critical, the reality is without income, people remain stuck waiting in the system for years. To exit homelessness, people need stability, and stability requires employment. After being out of the workforce for so long, I saw no place where I could realistically begin. Traditional employment systems were not designed for people suffering or managing trauma, mental challenges, or housing instability. That changed when I was introduced to the peer employment program through the Neighborhood Group. For the first time, my lived experience was recognized as a qualification and not a liability. I was hired into a trauma-informed, low-barrier role that understood relapse, fear, anxiety, and instability. When I started working, I struggled. I was late, I missed shifts. I had to relearn routine, accountability, and confidence. But instead of being fired, I was supported, and that support is what made the difference. Because of the City of Toronto's investment in peer employment last year, I was able to build stability, rebuild my confidence, and begin creating a life for myself. I would like to sincerely thank the city for that investment. Today, I support peers who are exactly where I once were. The city budget identifies shelter operations stabilization, and frontline supports as key responses to homelessness. Peer employment programs fit directly within this work because they operate where people already are, inside shelters. Peer workers help prevent overdoses, de-escalate crisis, improve safety, and support clients in building trust and stability. Yet there are not enough peer positions funded to meet the need. In my work, clients regularly ask me if we're hiring. They see people like them succeeding in these roles, and it gives them hope. Too often, I have to tell them that we're not hiring, and when that happens, momentum is lost. Peer employment leads to real outcomes. Peers move into paid work, education, training, and permanent roles. These are people who were once seen as unemployable by traditional systems. If we continue funding shelters without employment pathways, we will continue funding that revolving door. Today, I'm asking the Budget Committee to strengthen what is already working by expanding peer employment programs, funding additional peer positions, ensuring stable and livable wages, and formally embedding employment pathways into shelter operations. By investing in peer employment, the City of Toronto advances its 2026 goal of shelter stabilization, community safety, and prevention, while building long-term community well-being and real pathways out of homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi, and thank you for sharing your story with us. Are there any questions? No?
Thank you so much.
Have a good day. The next deputant I have listed is Jess Thorpe. Good morning, Jess.
Good morning, distinguished members of council. My name is Jess Thorpe, and I am a development associate at the Toronto Fringe Theatre Festival. And I'm here with Fringe's executive director and co-lead Rachel Kennedy, and we're grateful for the chance to speak at this morning's meeting. We want to start off by congratulating City Council on a strong first year of bringing the Culture Connects plan to life in 2025. For those who aren't familiar, Toronto Fringe is a grassroots charitable organization that runs the annual Toronto Fringe Festival in July, as well as various year-round programs that benefit youth, emerging artists, IBPOC artists, artists with disabilities, and Toronto communities seeking affordable access to the arts. By valuing creative experience and accessibility for all, we contribute to a healthy arts economy and ultimately a thriving city. In 2025, the Fringe produced 106 shows with over 800 performances in 22 venues across the city. We presented 16 free community events, 5 days of free family programming, and we issued 48,600 tickets to our staged productions. Our new hub at Soul Pepper Theatre made a remarkable media splash, resulting in Fringe appearing in 895 news articles, blog posts, and reviews. Our shows generated a whopping $580,000 in ticket sales, which we returned directly to our artists. That's over $500,000 generated for and by Toronto artists over just 12 days of indie theater programming. And that's thousands of artists being paid to share their culture, stories, and creativity. All of this was accomplished with tickets all under $15 each. So we remain financially accessible to Torontonians. This work would not have been possible without municipal support through the Toronto Arts Council, and we thank you for upholding your commitment to increase their budget by $2 million in the 2026 budget proposal.
Thank you, Jess. I want to echo our colleagues' request to maintain the proposed increase for the Toronto Arts Council and the local arts service organizations in the 2026 city budget. The reasoning for this is quite clear. Between FIFA and increasing social tensions here and internationally, 2026 is a year where we need local storytellers and community builders. We need them to present a united, welcoming city to those who are visiting Toronto. As we enter the second year in a 10-year strategy through Culture Connects, we encourage Council to remain consistent in honoring these commitments. If you want artists to continue to deliver world-class experiences and culture here in Toronto, then you need to ensure that we are able to afford to live and work here. For the artists that Toronto Arts Council supports and for the local arts service organizations themselves, city funding unlocks organizational capacity, it unlocks increased public outreach, and essential infrastructural support for the arts. For example, Toronto Fringe's 2026 budget has enough funding to support 120 productions, but we received over 1,400 applications to the festival. That is 1,400 stories ready to be heard, 1,400 experiences waiting to be shared, and tens of thousands of artists standing in the wings, seeking their chance to bring the next Kim's Convenience or To Kink in My Hair to life here in Toronto. I'm contextualizing this all through the Fringe to emphasize how one small but mighty organization can make these funds into exceptional, exponential impact. We are not unique in this ability, please don't get me wrong. Every organization supported through Toronto Arts Council and the Lassos is doing this work. There are countless stories out there of cultural connection, of finding belonging in unexpected places, of communities gaining meaningful access to the arts for the first time. These are the stories that we want at the forefront when people visit or even think of Toronto. And the artists, all of us here, are in the wings, ready to help you share them. We look forward to working with you to represent Toronto on the global stage in 2026. And I just want to thank you for your work. And if you'd like, I did bring some copies of our 2025 program guide if you want a visual example, not only of the number of artists, but of the community partner organizations.
Yeah, we'll have someone from Clerks coming so you can share that around. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? No? Thank you both so much for taking the time today
Thank you.
and for the work you do.
Thank you.
The next deputant I have listed is Senija Spasic. Hi, welcome.
Hello, it's Ksenia. Thanks so much.
Oh, I said,
Don't
sorry.
be sorry. I'm happy to be here. So it's the first time in my life that I've had an experience like this. It's really humbling to hear all the other speakers. I am also about to speak on behalf of the arts. And before I launch into it, I just want to say that I've been listening to people talk about homelessness and the other really important needs of Torontonians. And it may seem like the thing I'm about to discuss is much lower stakes. But there is a connection, and I've been part of that connection between the way that people live and the way that they're supported in the immediate necessities of their lives and the arts. So a lot of drop-in centers have arts programs. A lot of arts organizations connect to things that are there to provide people with food and shelter and medical care. Because I think we all know instinctively, even though we sometimes don't think about it at the very forefront of our minds, that the spirit and the body are connected, and that these things both matter. And you guys have a tough job figuring out how to spread this money around so that both of these things are met. But I'm really grateful to be here, and I'm really grateful to have heard everybody else who spoke before me. So let me jump in. Good morning. My name is Ksenia Spasic. I'm an artist. I live in Scarborough. I'm happy to speak to you today on behalf of the 6 local art service organizations, or the LASSOs, that were already mentioned by the previous speaker. That's Arts Etobicoke, East End Arts, sorry, I'm losing my voice, but I'll use the last of it to talk to you. Totally worth it. Lakeshore Arts, North York Arts, Scarborough Arts, and Urban Arts. The LASSOs are community arts organizations with a shared mission to provide free, how awesome is that? That's huge. Accessible and quality programming to the communities we serve every day. Being able to support LASSO's free programming is significant in the new 10-year Toronto Culture Plan, Culture Connects, which was adopted by City Council in November of 2024. It sets out a bold new vision for culture in Toronto, a vision for a city where everyone, everywhere can discover, create, and experience culture. The work of the LASSOs is particularly aligned with the priorities to provide culture for all, and culture everywhere in the Culture Plan. The LASSOs want to ensure that the promised investment of $35 million over 10 years, specifically the $380,000 assigned to support the LASSOs in the second year of this plan, will be honored. This is important to me and my family, to my friends and neighbors, to every person in Toronto, and that's not an overstatement. And I'll circle back to explain why it's not. A city is defined by the cultural and artistic opportunities it offers. Think of any famous city in the world. Really, just imagine it. I'm sure some words come to mind. Some of the first images that come to mind are inevitably of its arts and culture. For a fun exercise, you could do an image search, Toronto Arts and Culture, and you'll get exactly what you would expect. You'll see the ROM, you'll see the AGO, but you'll also see murals, you'll see Graffiti Alley, you'll see the less permanent things like the Nuit Blanche exhibits, that just happened recently. So I was part of Nuit Blanche for 2 years, and I wouldn't have been part of it this year if it hadn't been for East End Arts, which is the organization that I'm connected with. So East End Arts does a Nuit Blanche hub on the Danforth, and it's a favorite of many people. It's very contained, it's local. I applied through them, and I ended up doing a project that was very different to the one I applied for initially in order to make it local. And a lot of people turned up. I had support in terms of connecting with the community. I got to contact the awesome owner of the Linsmore Tavern, which is on the corner of Greenwood and Danforth. And all of that infrastructure makes art making possible, but it also makes it possible for people to show up and experience that art. So I used poems in the languages of the neighborhood, and people, both artists who felt like they were seen and represented, and people who were not artists, came along and had this experience. I see it. So
I'm afraid you're at time.
it's a hugely important thing. It's an investment that reaffirms our humanity and connects us.
Thank you, Ksenia.
Thank you so much for your time.
Are there any questions? No? Thanks very much. You did a great job. Sorry, they've got new buttons here on the timer, driving me crazy. Next, I have Wendy Porch.
Morning.
Good morning, Wendy. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Very well.
Good. Good morning, Budget Committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Wendy Porch. I'm the Executive Director of the Centre for Independent Living in Toronto, also known as SILT. I am a short white woman with long dark hair, and today I'm wearing a red shirt. I'm also a person with a disability. I served as a member of the city's Accessibility Advisory Committee for years. I also chaired the city's Accessibility Task Force on COVID-19 vaccines. I'm a member of the Accessible Housing Working Group and the Shelter and Housing Advisory Committee, known as SHAC. My organization, SILT, has supported disabled Torontonians for more than 40 years. We are also the convener of the GTA Disability Coalition, bringing together organizations across the region. Just last week, we co-hosted a budget town hall with members of the disability community, Social Planning Toronto, and TTC riders. Our community also contacts us on a daily basis for information and advice. What I hope to convey to you today is not just abstract policy analysis, it is what we are hearing from disabled people on a day-to-day basis, clearly and consistently. So let me begin with one example. We know of a disabled person in Toronto who is currently living out of their car. They had an apartment, they experienced a significant health challenge, went on ODSP, and they were pressured by their landlord to leave the apartment, and so now they live in a car. The places that are available to them are not accessible, they cannot afford them, and so instead of a home, they sleep in a vehicle, not because housing doesn't exist, but because accessible and affordable housing does not exist in the City of Toronto. And this is what happens when accessibility is treated as optional rather than essential, and this is not an isolated incident. At our town hall last week, we spoke about housing insecurity, affordability, and the growing gap between disability incomes and the cost of living in Toronto. People welcome the increased investment in the rent bank, but application limits mean people are still being turned away from that program. And what we know is that when disabled people lose housing, the consequences are immediate and severe. People also welcomed the TTC fare cap, which matters, but that appreciation was paired with concern because the fare is still too expensive for many people with disabilities, and the lack of snow removal in our city makes accessing transit almost impossible in the wintertime anyway. We heard from community members about places like New York City, where transit is substantially subsidized for disabled people, and in London, UK, where I myself lived for many years, the use of all buses and trams is entirely free for disabled people. This is clearly not the case in Toronto. Again and again, the same message came through to us. Disabled people do not see themselves in our city's budget. They do not see disability named. They do not see accessibility tracked year over year. And they do not see where spending is clearly targeted to ensure that the city that they live in is a city in which they can live safely, stably, and with dignity. And people with disabilities are not a small group. They experience poverty at twice the rate of the rest of the community. They are overrepresented among food bank users. They face higher rates of violence, instability in housing, and homelessness. Yet disability still seems to remain largely invisible in city planning and budgeting. The City of Toronto, I know, is a major housing provider. I know you know that. But you don't know how many units you have yourself that are accessible and whether disabled people live in them. There is much work to be done with our shelters. The shelters, despite us knowing that they are not accessible to disabled people, continue to operate. And the funding available, it appears that there's very little funding available to make capital improvements around accessibility for our shelters. Poverty initiatives in the City of Toronto do not name disabled people. Again and again and again, we hear that disabled people do not see themselves represented in the needs of our city. These are not data gaps, rather, but these are budget choices. It is in how the city plans, procures, maintains, and budgets for its services. Some cities treat disability inclusion as a core municipal issue. For example, the City of San Francisco has a dedicated office on disability and accessibility that is directly tied to the mayor's office. It has a mandate to coordinate accessibility across all initiatives in the city. Toronto does not have this level of coordination or clarity. So this morning, quickly, I'll ask for 4 things. Disability responsive poverty reduction. Please call out disability in the poverty reduction plan.
You're almost at time.
I
Just a
realize
final
that.
thought.
That's why I'm
Yeah.
trying to speed up. Accessible housing as essential infrastructure. Please make it impossible to build housing funded by the City of Toronto that is not accessible. Thirdly, visibility and accountability for accessibility resources across city services. And finally, clear municipal accountability for accessibility. When it is not clearly made accountable to someone, it is accountable to no one.
Thank you,
So
Wendy. I'm
thank you
going to
very
have
much.
to stop you
I
there.
appreciate it.
Are there any questions for Wendy? We're good? Okay. Thank you very much, Wendy. That's much appreciated. Roselle Martino. Hi, Roselle.
Councillor Moyes? Councillor Morley? Good morning. I'm Roselle Martino, Executive Vice President at the Toronto Region Board of Trade. As many of you would know, we represent thousands of businesses across Toronto and the broader region, and we do not receive any funding from the city. Thank you, first and foremost, to the Mayor and City Council for your leadership. You wouldn't do what you do if you didn't care about the city, so thank you. And as the voice of the Toronto Region business community, we recognize the city has worked hard to deliver a balanced budget whilst managing real affordability and service pressures. We do not underestimate how difficult those choices are. However, Toronto is facing a fiscal challenge, and it's multifaceted and started before Mayor Chow and this City Council. We know that. It is a challenge that requires structural and systemic change, and we urge the Mayor and Council to put forth a budget that does not stop short of a bold shift that this moment requires. The city is facing a projected $44 billion fiscal gap over the next decade. We appreciate keeping the headline property tax increase at 2.2% is intended to provide relief, but it relies on hundreds of millions of dollars in temporary bridging and reserve draws, essentially borrowing from tomorrow to fund today. That approach may balance a single year, but it does not build long-term fiscal resilience, which is really what we're trying to emphasize here. On behalf of the Toronto Region business community, we would like to see a budget that strengthens the city's capacity to deliver without relying on temporary fixes. With that, we strongly urge the city to consider the following. Strengthen the city's fiscal capacity by better leveraging public assets. As all of you know, the city owns extraordinarily valuable land, infrastructure, and utilities, yet many of these assets are underutilized. Responsible monetization and partnership models that we've seen in other jurisdictions as well can unlock capital for housing, transit, and digital infrastructure without increasing the burden on property taxpayers. Done properly, this strengthens reserves rather than depressing them and reduces ongoing resilience on short-term measures. Controlling operating costs through modernization and shared services. Toronto's competitiveness depends on efficient, digitally enabled operations. Today, fragmented permitting systems, legacy IT, and inconsistent services standards drive up costs and delay delivery. Expanding shared services, consolidating back office functions, and modernizing digital services are not operational upgrades, or are not optional upgrades. They are essential to delivering predictable, reliable service for residents and businesses. Thirdly, establishing an enterprise-wide expenditure management function. A centralized mechanism for to consistently prioritize scarce resources across divisions is indeed a true gap. A Treasury Board-like function focused on expenditure review, capital operating alignment, performance tracking, and fiscal risk would strengthen accountability and long-term planning. Simply put, governments cannot measure or they cannot manage what they don't measure. And I'm not talking about process measures or outputs, I'm talking about measuring outcomes and inputs and impact, Toronto must also modernize its regulatory system to cut red tape and accelerate growth. I know that there's an effort to do that genuinely, but delays in planning, permitting, and inspections add real costs to housing and infrastructure. This deters investment and erodes public trust. Clear service standards, public performance dashboards, and stronger cross-divisional coordination would materially improve outcomes. A regulatory efficiency officer, for instance, with appropriate authority could help drive sustained cross-city improvement. We genuinely applaud the city's decision to fund needed transit services and strongly endorse advancing major projects like the Waterfront East Transit. At the same time, we remain concerned about rising taxes on industrial and employment lands, and we will always maintain that position at the board, particularly at the time when businesses are facing tariffs, supply chain disruption, and global economic uncertainty. Protecting these job-creating sectors is critical to Toronto's long-term competitiveness and resilience. And finally, I would be remiss if I did not say, on behalf of the Toronto Region Board of Trade, that Toronto must move faster on congestion relief. As you know, this costs close to $50 billion in our economy. That's what congestion costs. Council's adoption of the Congestion Action Plan was an important step, and we truly welcome. I'm looking forward to collaborating with the Chief Congestion Officer, but success now depends on execution. It's always in the implementation. Coordinated construction, management, expanded transit priority, and faster delivery. This is especially concerning with FIFA 2026 approaching, and incrementalism is not an option.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to stop you there.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to mention that fiscal stability won't come from revenue tools alone. It requires a long-standing overhaul. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple questions, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Okay.
I was trying to get away, Councillor Parks, with questions from you. Councillor Moyes, I expect questions from.
Okay. Just start my time. So I think it's important we all operate from the same fact base. You talked a little bit about reserve draws, and I've seen commentary around that. Every year, the City of Toronto, as part of its normal business, puts money into reserves and takes it out for certain purposes. This year is not that much different than any previous year in terms of the total amount withdrawn. Two unusual costs are our election reserve and our FIFA reserve, which we have to spend this year. So you made a claim that this budget is unusual in the amount of reserve draws. Can you name for me any reserve draw we're making that is not money being spent for the intended purpose that we put into the reserve?
Councillor, I do have that information here, but I don't want to take time. Can I give it to you?
No, I just like you made a claim, and I don't think it's accurate, but if you could back it up, I'd be interested to hear.
Yeah, so my claim was that, I didn't say that this budget does it. What I said is that what the budget relies on if you, what my commentary was that that the 2% property tax increase was intended to provide release, but that the hundreds of millions of dollars in temporary bridging and reserve draws, it's essentially, I didn't say that this budget does it, I'm just saying in terms of an approach, we don't want to, we want to avoid the draws on
But
reserves.
you would agree, I think I've heard your point. You'd
Yes.
agree with me that it's wise to do
Yes.
things like, if you have to make a vehicle purchase in
Yes.
5 years, you put away a little bit.
Yes.
So that's what our reserve draws are.
Yes, I understand
Okay.
that. But sorry, sir, I just want to just mention that all we're just saying is that that it's also, we want to make sure that there is a plan or an approach to building the long-term fiscal
Okay.
resilience as well. That was my point. I didn't say that
Good.
this
We
budget
understand
did that.
each other better now.
Great, thank you.
You talked a little bit about the land we own and how your suggestion was we monetize it. Council has taken an approach to use the lands we own to construct affordable housing. So you're saying that instead of constructing that affordable housing, you would prefer we sell it?
No, not at all. I
That's
never
what I
said
think
that.
monetize means.
No, what I was saying, no, it's fair. It's a fair question. No, what I was saying is that we know that the city has a number of assets. I mentioned land as one of them. And all we are encouraging the city to do is look, as in any situation where you have any kind of debt, or you have a fiscal situation or you need fiscal headroom, you look at your assets. And that's all we're asking the city to do, to look at the assets that you have, whether it be land, whether it be entities, and look at how could those be monetized or how could there be different options to leverage those in a better way.
So is there something you would suggest that we sell that we haven't considered already?
I think that I don't want to say what the city should sell because that's like that is a sensitive area to go, obviously, because there's the city has great assets and they're very precious to the city. So I understand that. So I'm not going to come out there and say you should sell this or you should sell that. But we are encouraging you to look at your assets.
I must have misunderstood. I thought I heard you tell us to sell things.
No. You could do that, but I'm not telling you which ones to sell, Councillor.
Okay. You talked about, the rate at which permits are approved and how this might interfere with housing. As Chair of Planning and Housing, I take this very seriously. The most recent figures we've got is in the last, I want to say 4 years, we've reduced the processing time for permits related to development approvals and building permits by 80%. Is that your understanding too?
I have heard that you have, that the approvals have increased. But I've also heard a counter from the business community, which is that not much is being built. So that's why there's been, I'm not saying it's right or wrong.
So the processing time, you want to know something weird? This is strange. The number of applications for rezoning we're getting is actually increasing. It's just the building permits for stuff we've already approved.
Right. So
the processing time for permits has been reduced by 80%. Is that your understanding too?
I don't know if it's 80%, but I have heard that there's been an increase in processing time, actually. And again, Councillor, I'm just going back to my point.
Could you give me a source for that? I'd love to know who's saying
yes,
that.
I can get the source of that we heard it's increased.
Okay.
But my point is that, and what I was saying more broadly is that any delays in permitting and inspections, my point is that they add real costs. And so it's not just, yes, I appreciate that you're doing that. I'm saying that all of it has to happen together. And that's what deters investment. So it's about that sort of internal efficiency across all lines.
Okay.
That was the point I was making.
Great. I'm over my time. Are there any other questions?
Councillor, ask me something to protect me here.
That's not my job.
No, I know.
Councillor
I'm kidding.
So I know you are. But in your deputations, you talked a little about revenue tools, and you do realize that, the city over the many years I've been here, we've tried to actually engage the province to actually help us with more revenue tools. And what has the Toronto Region Board of Trade has done to help the city in regards to engage the province more? Because I know
Yeah.
you have a relationship with the province.
Yeah, Councillor, that's a fair question. What I would say is that, and I could produce this on the record for sure, is we have advocated on multiple occasions to the province and the federal government to support the city in terms of giving them more fiscal headroom. And we've done that in our submissions to the budget, to the provincial and federal budget, in meetings we've had with provincial ministers, including Minister Bethlen Falvey and Minister Champagne at the federal level. We have absolutely always advocated for the city in that. We understand that there's also an issue with operating. The city needs operating funds, right? So the unfunded mandates. You might get something unloaded on the city to do, but then you need the money to come along with that, right? And the operating money, for instance, the operating funding. It's not just the capital funding. We have advocated for that on behalf of the city.
Because a lot of people don't realize that, for example, housing, for example, is downloaded from the feds, the province to the city without the funding to follow. Even Toronto Employment and Social Services.
Yep.
And those were downloaded to the city, but the funding didn't follow. So those things add pressure.
Yeah, it's unfunded mandates is what we say at the board. Yeah.
And you talked a little bit about even FIFA, for example. The city's providing 1/3 of the budget for that, $179 million. But like for example, when Taylor Swift came to the city, the province.
What, sorry?
Taylor Swift, when she came to the city.
Yes, yeah.
We put a lot of resources to help with that. But at the end of the day, the province and the feds were able to actually make a lot of money through the sales tax. And the city, I think, had a $500,000 we got from the whole thing. And I expect when FIFA happens, the only revenue tool we have is the hotel occupancy tax. So again, we're putting all these resources into this FIFA, but the return for the city is not there. Yes, businesses will benefit and other levels of government will benefit, but the city will not. So again, has the Toronto Board of Trade spoken to the province about these sort of things?
Yeah, yes, we have. We are also part of the champions table and for FIFA, and absolutely do. And because also our physical location is on the waterfront, that's where most of the activities are going to be happening. So through our various coalitions, our various mechanisms, our various groups, we absolutely do speak to both to all levels of government. Because we get it. We understand that the city can only do so much. You need certain tools, whether it be legislation or policy. I see Councillor Slack somewhere, but she always points that out, right? Like, you can only do so much, and then you need to be enabled by other things, either at the province mainly or at the federal government. So in that context, we absolutely do speak to all levels of government to do. High tides lift all boats, Councillor. Yeah. Right? And that's where we're coming from. And this is all about economic prosperity because it pays for how we live. It pays for what the programs and services that Torontonians cherish. So that's all we're trying to advance.
Just one last question around the sales portion of the sales tax. Again, places like New York were able to actually have sales tax there. Well, they have sales tax there. Is that something that the Toronto Board of Trade would actually help champion?
I think that, I don't want to speak too precipitously or commit to that, but I definitely think that the Toronto Region Board of Trade, as I've said here, will absolutely advocate for alternate things. We have to think outside of the box. We have to look at different things, the way we've been doing it, and it's not a fault of anybody. The world has changed 8 times over. So we have to look at different approaches, different tools, different things. So in that context, we would be willing to absolutely support different approaches that give the city the fiscal headroom it needs to prioritize some of those key items, because the city needs fiscal headroom, so whatever that may mean.
Thanks so much. Deputy Mayor Morley has questions.
You're going to start today. We've got all the questions for you. Just a quick one, just to sort of tie a few things together. You mentioned about the opportunity to monetize and lean into partnerships on city assets. There's a project that the city's been working on that came to council last year with the Weston Lions Arena. There's a $15+ million state of good repair overhead for the city that we can't fund. We have an opportunity. MLSC has come to the table. Is this the kind of example and opportunity that the board supports?
Exactly, Councillor Moylan. That's exactly what we meant.
Great.
And thank you for that. Councillor Carroll, I believe, had mentioned that to us at some point in time, so we were aware of that. And that's exactly the kinds of things that we're suggesting, just to think differently, because we have no choice.
Great. We appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'll leave it there.
Gosh, that's a hot seat.
Yes, thank you so much. No, we do appreciate you coming and answering our questions. There are plenty of people out there with comments who don't come and have that conversation with us. Okay. Albert Venzel. Hi, Albert. Welcome.
All right. Good morning. I will thank you in advance to let me have my 5 minutes without cutting my mic. The review and the police are in here. If we did have a Doge Canada, we can start by scrapping the Senate. Scrap the Senate. No one will even miss them, as they do absolutely nothing. Have you found any efficiencies before going straight to another property tax increase? I have found many fairly easily. One remote viewer can replace 40 cops and actually save many innocent lives, what TPS refused to do. From the $135 million, the Senate's budget, $50 million will go to a remote viewing program. The review has a copy of the 2013 France warnings, which includes incel Danforth MacArthur, and record a new set of 2019 coronavirus predictions. In this budget, we should set aside monies to recall the review and have them explain themselves. Why is this omitted from their report? Why was no tragedy prevented? Free energy and flying cars is part of the budget, as it solves most of your woes. Surprisingly, the review proved all of my claims, then decided that they should be on the wrong side of history and censored all of the important information. If you do not want to recall the review, let's convene a new investigative body who has the courage to be honest and will get to the bottom of the Ryerson UAP incident. The Dr. Persinger Parapsychology Lab at Laurentian University can look into this matter the right way. TPS are frantic to cover up their past negligence and refuse to take and act on new predictions. What they did not factor in is that the 0 point energy will break in my lifetime, blowing the lid off of their mendacious cover-up and the review's falsified report. The bare minimum resolution is public, candid confessions out of the Ryerson witnesses, which should push the 0 point energy into the public domain and end the truth embargo. The city councilors have a duty and a bottom line responsibility to hold the review and TPS accountable. By invoking civilians' name, you don't get to dictate that the terms of reference are Judge Epstein gets to censor whatever she doesn't like. A civilian's review must be true, honest, transparent, and accountable. I must have the ability to recall them and have them answer my very serious questions and concerns. They cannot hide behind lawyers' privilege. All of their documents, audio recordings, witness list, and cross-examinations are to be made public, especially the France and virus forewarnings. All of the cost for a new investigation is to be borne by the city and comes out of the 2026 budget. Strong mayor powers should set the policy of TPS to implement the remote viewing program, restore back the good name of civilians, which has been tarnished by the review, and push for full disclosure of the UAP phenomenon. That's it for now.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No, we appreciate you taking the time.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for letting me have the time.
Next, I have Zubia Shahab. Welcome.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, so hello and good morning, Budget Committee. My name is Zubia Shahab, and I'm a resident of Ward 13, Toronto Centre. I'm here today to support this council in raising revenue and defending the services that make Toronto affordable, safe, and livable. One of the things I love most about the city is how walkable it is, and I love exploring Toronto on foot, discovering new businesses, enjoying local art, and seeing people interact with and enjoy our streets. But I've also seen some serious problems. People sleeping in tents on the sidewalk or in bus stations, transit that's slow, infrequent, and sometimes dangerous to board, shuttered stores and buildings falling apart. Now, we all know that Canada has an affordability crisis, but this is the richest city in the country, financially, culturally, and historically, and this crisis is unacceptable in Toronto, and we need decisive leadership to tackle this head-on. With regards to the city's revenue, I fully support the proposed property tax increases and luxury home buyer taxes to fund our city. I would like to see further taxation to incentivize speculative landowners and corporations to invest in the community instead of sitting on untapped wealth. I live near Glad Day bookstore, or at least I did before it was forced to leave due to increased rent. Local businesses are one of the best parts of the city, and it's difficult for the communities to go on after losing them. Buildings like 700 Yonge are visibly decaying, while other people struggle to find space to live or operate businesses. Right now, with the city's rules, it could be cheaper to let buildings sit empty and fall apart than it is to fix them or rent them. That needs to change. Higher vacancy taxes and fees on derelict properties would push land towards productive use. I know the city has worked hard to build affordable housing, which is very commendable, but decisions like limiting sixplexes to 9 wards left federal funding money at the table. When there's Torontonians sleeping on the streets, every dollar matters, and I urge Council to reconsider this and work with the government to unlock all potential revenue. Now, to talk directly about the budget allocation, right now we're proposing to spend $1.2 billion on policing, while less than $90 million, which is about 7% of that number, is marked for community well-being and violence prevention. As a Toronto Centre resident, I know firsthand that safe neighbourhoods are built through prevention. They rely on affordable housing, mental health support, crisis workers, strong economies, and public health initiatives. These investments can reduce harm before it happens, and they're better than responding afterwards. I urge the committee to rebalance spending towards the prevention of harm and crime rather than the response to it. The biggest item on the budget, however, is the TTC. I love the TTC and I rely on it to get around, but the streetcar system that I use most frequently is slow and it's infrequent. Just yesterday, I chose to bike in minus 18-degree weather because the 506 just didn't show up and I was running late for work. So I was really excited when Mayor Chow announced that streetcars would get signal priority after Line 6, and I want this to be rolled out as soon as possible, ideally before the world comes here for FIFA and experiences our transit system. To support this, I would encourage the city to remove street parking along transit routes as it slows down transit and cars. The revenue from this should be replaced by a commercial parking levy, especially for underutilized surface lots, which are pretty wasteful in the city. I would also like the city to consider a congestion charge for downtown Toronto, similar to London and New York City. It could reduce traffic, speed up transit, and raise up to $100 million for the TTC. This money can support more fare incentives like the 40 fare cap that's coming next year and free transit days. Everyone relies on our TTC, including the people who don't even use it directly, as it gets others out of their cars and into the transit vehicles. So by that logic, everyone should contribute to the TTC. With the election coming up this year and with the province's anti-democratic overreach into city into city policies, it's important that this budget protects the tools that the city does control and explores every avenue the city has for increasing revenue and protecting its services. Affordable housing, reliable transit, and community safety are not luxuries. They're essential to Toronto's future. I urge you to use every dollar possible to make the city more affordable and fight for Toronto's continued growth and its future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? First Deputy Mayor Morley and then Councillor Moyes.
Thank you so much for being with us and for your thoughtful submission today. As we know, and as everyone can appreciate, these are all, city building questions are all very difficult. We heard from an earlier deputant about the aging population. We also heard about disability community and their needs to move around the city. You suggested the removal of street parking along transit lines, which logical, we move more people on transit. But what do you say to folks like seniors aging in our city and disability, folks living with disabilities who have accessibility needs, in addition to our need to address congestion?
I think for folks who have disability needs, it's already challenging to get around the city, whether they're relying on transit or whether they're relying on parking vehicles. I think it's not necessarily an either-or situation. I think if you remove the majority of parking on the streets, you'll be able to speed up transit and you'll still be able to have exemptions for vehicles for disabled folks who do need access to that immediate parking near where they need to go.
That's helpful. I didn't mention the small business community and their interests as well, but I appreciate it. It's definitely a balancing act, but I appreciate your thoughtful submission. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Moyes.
Thank you for your deputation today.
Thank you.
You mentioned the commercial parking levy that the city should implement, also to congestion charge like London, England. Are you aware that in the 3 years I've been here, I proposed those two things to the province, because the city cannot just do it. We actually have to get permission from the province to do that. Are you aware that we've actually asked the province for those two things and they haven't responded?
I was not aware that the city has already engaged the province and has been denied the request. I think my frustration and my suggestions come from the point of view that Toronto is a very rich city and contributes heavily to both Ontario and Canada's GDP. We don't see that economic growth reflected in our city streets, and I would like to see more of that captured locally. I understand that it's not always within City Council's control and purview, so I appreciate you acknowledging that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. I love that you're very engaged and involved. Are you also aware that the city have invested in the Non-Emergency Crisis Center, which service, which actually it was piloted in downtown core, but now it's citywide. And in our Ward of Toronto Centre, the Gerstein Center is actually responsible for the downtown core. They're actually located on Charles Street in Jarvis.
Yes, I heard about that. I was very excited. I haven't read enough into it yet, but I did hear about it, and I think it's a great measure.
And most recently, you've actually added that service 24/7 on the TTC, and also in Toronto Centre in the U part of the ward as well. We also have a core program which involves a Toronto Public Health nurse and a Toronto Police in the core to proactively help people who may be in crisis.
Mm-hmm.
So I mentioned those things because the city is doing a lot to try to actually make things better, especially in the core of the city. And one of the things that we actually do have is the Downtown East Action Plan. It's around street cleaning, graffiti removal, and even human feces and harm reduction.
We aim for a question.
Things. So are you aware of all these things that are taking place in our ward of Toronto Centre?
I'm not aware of all of them. I'm aware of some of them, but it's good to hear about the other ones as well. So thank you for bringing those up, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for your deputation. It's very much appreciated. Next, I have Tayalini Sri Mohanaraja. Hi. Was that close?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Whenever you're ready.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tayalini Sri Mohanaraja. I'm a chartered professional accountant. I work at the Neighborhood Group Community Services as a budget analyst. Today, I am representing my personal view. Toronto Toronto is one of the most visited cities in North America. People come here for professional sports, concerts, festivals, waterfront attraction, and major cultural events. While they are here, they rely on our transit system, roads, parks, policing, police emergency services, and public spaces. These services are essential for tourism to function safely and successfully. Yet, most visitors do not pay a dollar for them. Toronto's main tourism levy is the municipal accommodation tax, which only applies to overnight stays. This approach no longer reflects how people actually visit the city. A large share of visitors are day visitors. They come for a Leaf Games, a major concert, a festival or convention, and they leave the same day. The visitors generate real and measurable cost. They pay nothing directly to the city services. As a result, Toronto's residents are subsidizing tourism. This imbalance has consequences. Residents pay higher taxes and service pressure, while the non-profit and art and cultural organizations that make Toronto attractive struggle with unstable funding. Toronto is not breaking new ground by addressing this issue. Many major cities already require their visitors to contribute fairly. New York City applies ticket surcharges on sports and entertainment and cultural events, in addition to hotel taxes. The revenues support transit, public safety, and cultural programming. Paris includes visitors' levies in museum admissions and major attractions, with funds directly forwarded to city services and heritage preservation. Barcelona uses tourism taxes to fund neighborhood infrastructure, crowd management, and cultural institutions because the city recognizes the tourism affects residents, whether visitors stay overnight or not. Chicago applies the entertainment taxes to ticket events, ensuring visitors contribute city services regardless of overnight stay. Las Vegas uses combination of hotel taxes and event-based fees to fund tourism, public safety and designated management without shifting the burden to residents. I could go on and on and on. The cities are not suffering from lack of tourism. They are managing it responsibly. So, in Toronto, meanwhile, we host millions of day visitors every year. I urge you to set aside funds to implement a pilot project for this. We cannot wait. Our revenues are broken. We must start to make our city more equitable. Will you make a move to fund a pilot project to collect this fund? Can you afford not to?
Thank you very much. That's your whole deputation? Okay. Are there any questions? Deputy Mayor Morley.
Thank you so much for joining us and for your submission here today. I believe you were at my town hall last night as well for the town hall in Etobicoke. Thank you for joining us. Just wanting to ask you with respect to new revenue tools and especially new taxation tools. You're aware of the relationship with the provincial government where we often are needing to get permission before we're able to implement or introduce new revenue generating or taxation tools. Are you aware?
No.
So we've got to get permission on many of these things. But just to also say we are doing some temporary work around FIFA, around some of the accommodation taxes, but there are very limited tools in our toolbox, as you well know. So again, really appreciate your advocacy here today, and we'll continue our conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
The next deputy I have listed is Waleed Kogali Ali. Waleed?
Good morning. Okay, perfect. Good morning. My name is Waleed Kogali Ali. I'm the co-chair of the Regent Park Neighborhood Association. I'm a housing and social development advocate. So to the chair, members of the Budget Committee, on Monday, we observed Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And I want to begin with his words because they speak directly to the choices before you today. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Today, that injustice is unfolding in Toronto, quietly and relentlessly, through evictions from social housing, our housing of last resort. The human toll you don't see in the budget. Behind every eviction statistic is a family, a neighbor, a life disrupted. I think of Zulekha. I think of Reem, residents pushed into crisis, not because they failed their community, but because the system failed them. Seniors aging in fear. Newcomers navigating complex systems without language support. People with disabilities losing stability. Children forced out of schools because their families were displaced. Evictions don't just remove people from units. They tear families apart, destabilize buildings, and unravel whole neighborhoods. What the data now shows clearly, the numbers that were shared by Toronto Community Housing confirms what communities are living every day. From January 1st to October 31st, 2025, just last year, Toronto Community Housing tenants living in Toronto Community Housing, an entity owned by the City of Toronto, 391 households were evicted. Those are preliminary figures. That translates to more than 1,200 of our neighbors, children, seniors, families, pushed out of social housing and sent into a pipeline towards shelters, couch surfing, overcrowding, and encampments. This is not accidental. This is not unavoidable. This is the predictable outcome of policy choices and budget priorities. We're spending more, but we're not spending smarter. This is not an argument about whether the city is spending money. It is about how we're spending it. Toronto spending, debt spending actually, to be specific, has increased dramatically over time. In 2005, we spent $473 million. In 2015, we spent approximately $591 million. In 2025, we spent approximately $968.5 million, almost $1 billion. That is more than double in 20 years in debt payments alone. And yet, evictions from social housing are rising, homelessness is worsening, and encampments are growing. Spending more without investing wisely does not produce better outcomes. We continue to underfund evidence-based prevention while paying far more for crisis response, emergency shelters, enforcement, and policing. What this budget is choosing to fund and what it is not going to fund. Budgets are moral documents, but they represent our political priorities. They tell us what we value. This budget recommends $93.8 million in additional funding to the Toronto Police Services, roughly $625,000 that could be allocated for every neighborhood across Toronto. That's all 158 neighborhoods, my friend. And yet, $0 for tenants, eviction in social housing who do not qualify for the rent bank because they're on ODSB or on Ontario Works, $0 for eviction prevention in Toronto Community Housing, $0 for the Regent Park Social Development Plan. Let me be very, very clear. Regent Park recorded 0 gun-related deaths in 2023, a milestone directly credited to long-term investments in social development, prevention, and community-led safety. The Confronting Anti-Black Racism Advisory Committee passed a resolution encouraging the Executive Committee to invest in social development plans.
And Waleed, you're at time. Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Waleed? Seeing none, thank you for your deputation today.
Thank you.
Next, I have listed Adria Bud Johnson. Hi, Adria. Welcome.
Hi.
Whenever you're ready.
Can you see the slides?
You need some AV help?
Yeah.
Okay. It's on its way. Help is on its way.
I did plug in. You can see it, but I can't see it. Anyway, I can advance it.
It's on the screens here if you look.
Thanks.
Yeah? Okay.
Oh, okay. All right, hello, hi. Thank you so much for all you do. It's been so important for me as a person to hear about all the budget stuff and the momentous shift that's happened in the last year. Makes me really happy. My name is Adria Bud Johnson, and I'm a resident, a unit owner, and also the condo board president at 25 Ritchie Avenue, which is in Ward 4. It's called Roncesvalles Lofts. And I'm here on behalf of our building, the neighboring condos, local businesses, and many people that use and rely daily on the alley directly east of our building. The core issue is that this alley is in advanced disrepair. However, it's not owned by us, and we don't have an easement. It's heavily used, and without intervention, there's a clear risk of injury, vehicle damage, and liability. And we're here today to ask the city to help us with this heavily used alley and to get it into a state of good repair. Why this matters: this alley is essential infrastructure. It's access for 3 condo buildings, service access for more than 6 Dundas West businesses used daily by garbage recycling, fuel, and delivery trucks, and also utilized by pedestrians, cyclists, and TTC riders. Because the business side is usually obstructed, all traffic is forced to our side of the alley, which accelerates damage. And the root cause that makes it even worse is there is no drainage at the north end of the alley. It causes persistent pooling, repairs fail within months, flooding happens, potholes return, and pavement collapses. And even the cheapest short-term fix is about $10,000 a year, and it won't last. So, because we don't own the land, we don't have a legal right to modify it, and the city's advised us that we should just take care of it, the major repairs necessary are not affordable and they're not sustainable because of this lack of drainage. So it's not legally viable nor equitable, and the city approved development of our building without an easement or a maintenance framework. So we rely on this alley every day. We're calling on the city to please cooperatively resolve this issue. We've spent hundreds of unpaid hours trying to solve this, and city staff across multiple departments have also been investing time and resources with no pathway to resolution. So the thing that makes it more challenging is there's a 126-unit condo development. It's imminent on the opposite end of the alley. It's only going to make it worse. And we have at least one of the businesses in our neighborhood is considering legal action rather than contribute to the alley's upkeep. So this is not escalating. It is escalating, and it's not being resolved. So my ask is that it's immediate drainage assessment and remediation, road infrastructure repair assistance, and clarity on legally defensible assignment of responsibility. We both inherited this issue, and together we can solve it efficiently, economically, and responsibly. We urge you to continue to invest in infrastructure and wet water mitigation, because the rain is going to keep coming, and it's going to be a bigger and bigger problem, especially how it relates to this alley. So thank you for your time and willingness to understand.
Thank you. Any questions? I sort of, so thank you for that. It's not strictly a budget thing, but I gave you a little leeway. I know we've done some work together. My latest update for you is that Municipal Licensing and Standards is making an effort to gather all the private property owners who own parts of that lane. But again, because it's not a public lane, it's not something where we go and do the work. But we'll have a further conversation, okay?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. And I've got Kathleen. Did you want to say a few words, or are you good? Kathleen Payne? Okay. Hi, Kathleen. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, I'm from No More Noise Toronto, where I volunteer regularly. And I was going to speak to you today about Toronto's growing problem with noise pollution, how it is such an equity issue, and many other things. But I woke up this morning wondering if perhaps, in fact, I didn't need to speak to you because I was watching the news last night when an interesting new presenter was announced. Here with your 6 o'clock sound forecast is noise specialist Jessie Decibel. And there she was. Hello, listeners. This just in. Environment Canada has issued a special alert for Toronto and all the GTA over the next 36 to 48 hours. If you are planning a quiet evening at home, expect intermittent showers of modified mufflers all along the DVP and the Gardiner Expressway, which will continue to about 4 a.m. If you live along the Ontario Line construction, expect periods of steady sleep interruption, followed by gusts of dread and frustration as your startled awake body once again endures lightning bursts of the fight or flight hormone. For those who live within 10 kilometers of Rogers Stadium in the Downsview area, the forecast calls for downpours of rock and roll and thumping bass vibrations. Planning on some lovely family time in the yard of the park tomorrow, expect periods of deafening gas-powered lawn equipment. And don't forget to bring the earplugs for the kiddies. I know, it's hard enough to get them to listen to you anyway, but better that they can't hear you now than they can't hear anything at all by the time they grow up. And for all the kiddies who attend schools on busy streets, you'll be battling typical squalls of traffic noise, sirens, and prevailing garbage pickup as you try your best to concentrate on the challenges of grade 4 math. Across many neighborhoods, expect a steady downpour of overnight garbage pickup with periods of lid banging and monsoons of compacting. The window shaking level is predicted to be moderate to near shattering, so really not too bad for this time of the year, though we expect significant rattling on the DVP due to concentrated accumulations of road racers. And finally, turning to our favorite place in Toronto, Lake Ontario will see pop-up showers of personal watercraft as a front of sports equipment entrepreneurs disturbs nesting birds, recovering fish populations, and beachgoers alike, with both underwater and above-water racket and thundering storms of revving motors. So that's the latest noise forecast. Thanks for tuning in, and good luck tuning it out. Oh, wait, more breaking news. This recommendation just in. Toronto needs to fund a noise task force. I'm Jessie Decibel. See you tomorrow.
Thank you. That was a lot of fun.
Good.
Are there any questions? Deputy Mayor Morley?
Thank you so much. Appreciate the approach and the levity there, but I know that this is a very serious issue, and I've worked closely with Ingrid in the work at No More Noise Toronto, so thank you for the volunteering that you're doing there. We did talk a few years ago at Toronto Public Health as we were doing our work around, oh goodness, so many pieces of work now I'm blanking on the work, strategic planning, I believe, and looking at what some of the trending issues were in the city related to health. noise continued to come up as one of those issues. And I just wondered, with appreciation for the specific recommendation around a noise task force, why is this a health issue that you're seeing and hearing from with your membership that the city needs to continue to take very seriously?
Well, the World Health Organization designates noise pollution as the number 2 detriment to urban health, and the number 1 is air pollution. So that's kind of a blanket statement. Ingrid's going to be speaking to you later today, so she could, if you give her the time, could cite maybe 20, 30, 40, 50, because she is contacted often by people who are suffering in this way.
Thank you. And with our mental health challenges rising, I think it's important that we continue to understand what some of the impacts are and what's driving some of these pieces. So again, thank you so much. I appreciate you joining us today.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Thank you so much. And Mika Wade? Hi, welcome.
Oh. Great to see you again, Councillor Perks.
Great to see you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, councillors, Deputy Mayor, councillors of the Sub-Budget Committee. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak today. My name is Anamika Wade. I am the Executive Director of the Toronto Alliance for the Performing Arts, or TAPA. While TAPA is not funded directly through the city's budget, the artists, producers, and organizations we serve are profoundly shaped by the decisions made in this room. I want to begin by saying thank you. We are genuinely grateful for the city's continued investment in arts and culture, including the proposed $2 million increase to the Toronto Arts Council. That investment, it really truly matters, and we are already seeing its impact across the sector. What I am here to speak to today is the importance of maintaining and supporting future increases, including those that consider inflation for both the Toronto Arts Council and the local art service organizations, or LASSOs, funded by the city. The mayor has rightfully framed this budget around affordability, sustainability, mobility, and safety. From where I sit, recognizing and supporting an inflationary increase aligns directly with all of these priorities. Artists are residents and workers in this city. They pay rent, take transit, raise families, and contribute to the life of their neighborhoods. Yet many are being priced out of Toronto at the same time the city is relying on them more than ever to animate public spaces, support tourism, and define Toronto's cultural identity, particularly as we look towards FIFA in 2026. When operation funding does not keep pace with inflation, organizations are forced to absorb rising costs. That doesn't show up as a line item. It shows up as fewer contracts for artists, scaled back programming, and growing burnout for staff. This is not a theoretical concern. It's already happening. 90% of TAC funding goes straight to the artists and arts organizations. Excluding funding for inflationary adjustments creates an imbalance, especially when the TAC and the LASSOs are core partners in delivering the city's own cultural plan. I would like to encourage council to consider the long view. Implementation follows investment, as we all know. If the city is asking arts organizations to collaborate, innovate, and deliver public value, the resources must be in place to support that work. We see the impact of stable funding every day in festivals like the Toronto Fringe, where modest public investments enables mentorship, audience development, collaboration, and local economic activity. These ecosystems do not thrive by accident. They rely on predictable, sustainable support. Finally, I want to underscore that the arts sector is ready. As many of you saw during Arts Week at City Hall in October, when I got to meet with Councillor Perks personally, artists are already representing Toronto with energy and pride, and we are so eager to do more. Inflationary increases help ensure that when the city calls on us, we are there to answer. This ask comes from a place of partnership. The arts sector wants the city to succeed, and we are already doing the work in neighborhoods, in communities, and on the ground with artists who live here. As the city looks ahead to FIFA, to the full implementation of its culture plan, and to building a more affordable and sustainable Toronto, I hope Council will continue to see artists and arts organizations as true partners in that work. Budgeting for future inflationary increases is a practical, achievable step to ensure the sector remains resilient, responsive, and ready when the city calls on us. Thank you for your time and your continued commitment to a vibrant cultural life for Toronto. I'd also like to introduce Mike Scott. He is the General Manager of Theatre Gargantua and one of my TAPA board members. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks. Are there any questions for Anamika before we go to Mike? No? Anamika, thanks as always.
Oh, thank you very much.
All right, Mike, you're up. Top that.
Good morning, and thank you for your time this morning. As Anamika said, I'm Mike Scott. I'm the General Manager of Theatre Gargantua and a member of the Board of Directors of the Toronto Alliance for the Performing Arts. I've also, over more decades than I might care to admit, had the opportunity to work with many small arts organizations who work with the local arts services organizations from Etobicoke to Scarborough, and I know the importance and value of local arts programming. And by local, I don't just mean Toronto arts programming, but local to the individual neighborhoods that are the heart of the city. Many of my arts colleagues today have talked to you about numbers and statistics to support our arguments, and I would like to speak to you in language I'm more familiar with in the arts and tell you some stories. Theatre Gargantua this year is a direct recipient of the benefits of the investment that City Council placed in the arts last year when they increased the Toronto Arts Council budget. For the first time in almost a decade, we've received an increase to our annual operating grant from the Toronto Arts Council. And when you look at our budget, particularly after this year when we, like so many others, have faced incredible budgetary pressures, this has taken a bit of the edge off for the coming year. When you look at our budget, the vast majority of the money in our budget goes directly to salaries and fees for arts and arts workers. So that money goes directly back into city building by supporting Toronto residents, not just in the art that we produce, but directly and financially to the people who are producing it. Echoing what Anamika has said, the importance of inflationary increases as well is to be considered. We have received the same amount from the Toronto Arts Council for nearly a decade. It has not been cut. It has been the same number. But because it has not increased with the budget, our budget, until recently, it's effectively been stretched further and further every year, almost as if it was being cut. And so the long-term game is very, very important. And we are very grateful that the 10-year plan is in place, and I encourage you all to continue to support it because it is a valued and greatly appreciated investment in our city building. At this particular moment in time, as we face direct threats to our national cultural sovereignty, and as we prepare to host the world with FIFA this summer in Toronto, having that ability to tell Toronto stories, to tell Canadian stories is more important than ever. This year, I had the opportunity to take the voices of Toronto artists across Ontario and in fact across Canada to share the stories that they are telling. And it is through the investment that is being made in Toronto artists that we are able to do that work and share those stories. Increased investment in arts and culture is fully aligned with the city's arts and culture plan and with stated priorities around economic resilience, affordability, and quality of life. I encourage you to continue to think of arts funding as not just a cost center, but an investment multiplier that brings back more to the city than we spend. I thank you for the support you have in the past. I look forward to the support that you will continue to give the arts, and I encourage you to consider that in budgetary considerations.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Mike? No. No, thank you both so much for your deputations.
Thank you.
One moment, I just have to confer with the Thank you very much. Sorry for that interruption. Next, I have Philip Panitescu. Philip? No? Miguel? Avila? Oh.
Thank you, brother.
You're quite welcome. I don't know what I did to deserve the thanks, but
I'm joined by a neighbor from Region Park, Rabia, who's going to be my assistant for a minute. I need to plug in my laptop. 1 second, please. I need help, sorry.
Got you. Do you have a full HDMI?
HDMI. Hold a second.
I'll put you on it.
All right. I'm set. Thank you, councilors. My name is Miguel Avila. I have been a regular presenter since 2010. This year, I'm celebrating 16 years of community activism. I'm here to speak on the TCAC budget, which, as you can see, one of the responsibilities as we have for the city is to be responsible for policing. Why not request that the budget police is shared with the province and the federal government? Chief Denwick wants to increase 90%, 90 officers times 4, so 360 officers for 2026 budget. That represents a lot of cash that could go to other areas of the city. We know that defunding the police will help to expand our budget for youth services, universal health care, education, housing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I had told Mayor Olivia Chow and Councilor Chris Moyes that defunding the police is not a crazy idea. In fact, it is a smart idea, but we need to do a smart. We could request the province, Doug Ford, Uncle Doug Ford or Uncle Carney to take care of the budget of the police because it's too much pressure on other departments. Last December 11, I went to the Toronto TCAC board, and they have said that if there is no funding for the year 2027, they're going to be facing with the need to close down some units, and that's very scary. The state of good repair of Toronto Community Housing is not $1.9 billion as is on the report from the city manager on page 26. It's more than 1.9. It's currently sitting at $44 billion, the state of good repair. And as you know, 54% of the buildings of TCAC are currently in need of repairs. So I'm going to give you a good example. In 2020, we approved $30 million for this property, 220 Oak Street. You see, a renovated building that was going to cost in 2020 $30 million. This is pre-pandemic prices. But with the post-pandemic, it's not going to cover not even 50% of the project. So we need something about $40 million to complete this ambitious project that will have a wellness hub because we are aging in place. We need support services on site. And that is the way we're going to direct our landlord to provide with services in-house. Currently, we don't have it. So in the report that the CEO said on December 11, 2025, that if we don't have a new deal, the city doesn't have a new deal with the province and the feds, we may have to close down units. And that is scary, my friends, because imagine we are the housing of the last resort. If we don't have units up to date, we'll have no other choice but closing down. So with regards to the SDP, yes, Councilor Chris Moyes, the SDP was an experience. It was a a lesson to learn. And out of that lesson, I want to emphasize that we need to have conflict resolution, mediation for tenants, residents, because we come from different cultures and we have different ideas and different philosophies. So I know that Lawrence Heights is going to have money for a social development plan, but learn from us, then learn from the mistakes, because misinformation is one of the key parts of the reset. Did you know that 50% the trusted agencies charge us for administration fees so that we can use that money to our projects in Regent Park? But imagine, it's 15%, and the community were not aware of that. And they thought that the money was going into somebody else's pockets. That is not true. It was just a misinformation. So we need to have a better SDP where everybody's on board and informed. Unfortunately, not many tenants read the agenda. Not many tenants are aware of what's going on with the minutes. So,
Miguel, I'm afraid you're at time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Are there any questions
Any
for
questions?
Miguel?
I'm here, you know where.
No. Thank you. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay, our final deputant for this morning's session is Janet Lambert. Withdrawn. Hi, Janet, welcome.
Hi, thank you, Councillor, and thank you to all of you for sticking around and your ability to sit for so long. I'm Janet Lambert. I'm a board member for Dixon Hall. Shout out to Councillor Moyes, who's been so supportive of Dixon Hall. And also wanted to say thank you, Councillor Peirce, as well as Councillor Bravo, who had a great Toronto Star op-ed today or yesterday, I think it was. So again, thank you. I'm a board member, as I mentioned, of Dixon Hall, and I'm representing the Shelter and Support Board Advocacy Coalition. My other qualifications is I can speak really quickly, so again, thank you for toughing this out. Dixon Hall, like my SSBAC colleagues, empowers those most vulnerable Torontonians through housing, shelter, and other supports to overcome barriers. We create lasting community impact, building more inclusive and resilient community for all. So I have two thank yous and one ask today in my 5 minutes. So the first thank you is to the mayor, councillors, staff, to acknowledge and support that Emergency Shelter and Homelessness Service Worker Appreciation Week this week. That was fantastic. And a shout out to all the shelter and homeless service workers who support Torontonians every day. It's great to have this recognition. So as I mentioned, I'm part of SSBAC. Our mission is to build community care together for a strong shelter and support sector. We were founded very recently by Fred Victor Board of Directors, and our mission is to affect systemic change in the shelter and support sector through board directors of the different organizations that we represent. We represent a lot of community agencies that serve a lot of underserviced folks in the GTA. Here's a list of some of our members. As well, we're supported very strongly by partners like the Toronto Shelter Network and Ontario Nonprofit Network. So since we've started, we've been very fortunate to work with the city and collaborate with you. And so part of our work plan for this year is to continue the wage equity challenge that we see. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. We want to ensure our presence at new shelter community engagements events to support the work that the city does and invests in to help counter the NIMBYism so that work can continue unabated. And we want to broaden our advocacy to include the provinces and the feds, the province and the feds, because we know that while the vast majority of funding comes from the municipality, there are buckets in the province and in the feds, and there's also advocacy work we can do to help you advocate for more downloaded funding. And our new work this year will be supporting Toronto refugees for shelter and transition to homes. So as I mentioned, I'd say the wage equity challenge, what we're seeing is, and I'm old enough to remember the 90s when there was issues around equal pay for equal work, and it got resolved through legislation. And then back in 2025, we see that it's again an issue. People who are doing the exact same job, the exact same qualifications, the exact same accountabilities are getting different pay. And so this, our community folks are getting significantly lower wages than city-operated shelter folks. And not only is it lower, it's really not sustainable because it's not a living wage to be in Toronto and work in Toronto. And so what that does is it impacts the service providers like ourselves at Dixon Hall because of the turnover that we see when people are saying, wow, big difference in wages, I'm going to go over there. And so we end up with private sector temp agencies giving them a lot of money. The training, the turnover, it impacts provision of service to Torontonians who need it. So just how bad is it? 15% difference in wages for our frontline workers and 30% for managers. And so, as I mentioned, the impact is we're competing for talent. We're constantly having this turnover, this churn, reliance on temp agencies, orientation. And then the staff that stay behind end up having increase in caseload, and so much greater issues around morale and increase in sick days. So the service continuity that we're able to provide, the mission continuity is greatly impacted. And a special impact is on the racialized community who are working very hard. Frontline shelter and support workers are predominantly racialized women. And so the low value translates into lower funding and lower wages for this vulnerable group. So I said I wanted to thank you. So one ask, two thank yous. The second thank you is the commitment that you had to raise salaries. It's now $65,000 for a salary for a frontline worker, and that $7 million sector enhancement plus cost of living has come in to great help for this, and I'll show you in a couple of data points too. So the average frontline...
I'm so sorry you won't be showing us in a couple of minutes because you've used your time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are there any questions? I just want to, if I could just make a comment.
Yes.
Like, I'm a man of a certain age. The 90s were only an eye blink ago.
Thank you for saying that.
Deputy Mayor Morley had a
Thanks,
question.
Mr. Chair. I'd love to just hear some of your final thoughts that you'd like to share with us and appreciate the thoughtful presentation you've put together. So just wanted to give you a chance to conclude.
Thank you very much. I super appreciate that. So we are thanking you for the $7 million. We're hoping for more for the managers because right now there's wage compression going on. So a manager with greater accountability is saying, why am I basically hardly getting a living wage and so much more accountability, but almost the same wage as a worker? And CUPE has been very supportive in helping you increase your wages for city folks. So we get a little bit of, closing the gap and then opening it again. So we just want to ensure that this is recognized. And again, thank you for your support so far.
We always appreciate a solid, constructive piece of recommendation. So we'll take that back. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. So that concludes our deputation list for the morning session. I'll see you all back here.
We need to receive those.
Pardon me?
We need to receive these presentations.
Oh, okay. Hang on. We've got some formal business to do. You can, yeah. All right.
So, Lord, display the motion.
There's a motion. Oh, dear. This is, being a man of a certain age, my eyesight. Oh, here we go. Wait, reading glasses? I would like to move that the Budget Subcommittee receive the public presentations on the 2026 capital and operating budgets for information. And with that, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Good. That was a tight vote. We will reconvene at 1:30 for the second session. All right. I didn't know we have to do that at each session, of course.